Imagine this. You wake in a room with walls the color of static, a space so devoid of edges it feels infinite. There is no clock, but you sense time passing, a faint metronomic drip in the distance. The air is warm, odorless, perfectly still. You've been here before. You've always been here. A voice, neither kind nor cruel, whispers, "Stay, you're safe." You try to move, but your limbs resist. Not paralyzed, sedated. A part of you wants to scream. A deeper part insists, this is peace. This is your comfort zone, not the cliché of lazy Sundays or familiar hobbies, but the invisible ecosystem where every risk is sterilized, every uncertainty filtered out. A place where your soul goes to hibernate. You've mistaken its numbness for contentment, its predictability for control. But here's the paradox. The safer you feel, the more danger you're in. The walls aren't protecting you, they're digesting you, slowly, painlessly, turning your vitality into wallpaper. Why does this happen? Why do humans, anatomically wired for exploration, neurologically designed to thrive on novelty, become accomplices in their own atrophy? Consider the moth that mistakes a light bulb for the moon, circling until its wings disintegrate, or the zoo-born tiger pacing a cage smaller than its ancestral memory, muscles wasting beneath glossy fur. Comfort zones are human-designed zoos. But who's the keeper? The answer is written in the fear you refuse to name. You are both the prisoner and the warden. Think of the last time you avoided a conversation that might have changed everything. The job you didn't apply for, the trip you postponed, the truth you swallowed. Each was a brick laid in this chamber. Each decision, however trivial, carried a silent oath. I choose safety over aliveness. But here's the unsettling truth. Safety is a myth sold by your own biology. Your amygdala, that ancient sentinel, conflates discomfort with death. It would rather you starve in a familiar wasteland than risk the unknown feast. Yet something in you knows. It's why you feel a vague unease scrolling through others' curated lives, why your chest tightens when you hear phrases like settling down or realistic expectations. This isn't mere FOMO, it's your soul's immune system, reacting to an existential pathogen. The comfort zone isn't a place, it's a religion, and its central dogma is this: risk is sin, certainty is salvation. But what if the opposite is true? Philosophers have circled this abyss for centuries. Kierkegaard called it the dizziness of freedom, the nausea that strikes when you peer over the edge of your possibilities. Nietzsche warned, the surest way to corrupt a youth is to instruct him to hold in higher esteem those who think alike than those who think differently. Yet society mass-produces this corruption daily. Algorithms feed you echoes of your existing beliefs. Careers reward conformity. Relationships fossilize into routines. We're all being gently vacuum-sealed into versions of ourselves that fit neatly on shelves. But the human spirit isn't a product. It's a verb, a relentless act of becoming, which means every moment spent in the comfort zone isn't rest. It's renunciation, a betrayal of your potential. Picture a sculptor who only carves soap, terrified of the marble that might crack under her chisel. Now look inward. What masterpiece are you avoiding to keep your hands clean? The question isn't whether your comfort zone is killing you. It is. The question is, what corpse are you trying to preserve? The you that society approved of at 25? The identity built on others' expectations? The ego that would rather suffocate than admit uncertainty? There's a reason claustrophobia and existential dread share the same tightness in the chest. Your soul knows it's being buried alive. Yet, here's the twist. You've already taken the first step. By lingering in this discomfort, by reading these words, you've begun to scratch at the walls. But be warned, what comes next isn't inspiration, it's autopsy. We're about to dissect the lie you've been breathing like air, to expose the machinery behind the voice that whispers, "Stay," the clock you couldn't hear earlier. It's ticking louder now. The ticking grows louder. Not a clock now, a heartbeat. yours, thrumming in sync with a primal truth. Your comfort zone isn't accidental, it's engineered. To understand why, we must excavate the buried alliance between your biology, your psyche, and the invisible architecture of modern society. Begin with this unnerving fact. Your brain is a traitor, not out of malice, but evolutionary pragmatism. For millennia, survival depended on conserving energy and avoiding risk. Your amygdala, the neural relic of our ancestors who outran saber-tooths, still treats emotional risk like physical peril. A rejected idea triggers the same cortisol surge as a predator's growl. Criticism lights up pain receptors like a burn. This isn't metaphor, it's neuroscience. You're being hijacked by a system that mistakes creativity for carnivores. But biology is only the first layer. Carl Jung warned of the shadow, the psychic basement where we bury traits deemed unacceptable by our persona. The comfort zone isn't just a refuge from external threats. It's a fortress against these exiled parts of yourself. Every time you silence an unconventional thought, suppress a weird passion, or laugh at a joke you don't find funny, you're feeding the shadow. And it's starving. Its hunger manifests as the ennui you dismiss as just a bad day, the existential itch no distraction can scratch. Jung called this the price of normality, but what's normal if not society's way of mass producing? Comfort zones? Enter Friedrich Nietzsche, who saw modern humanity as herd animals trading sovereignty for security. His concept of the will to power, not domination, but the drive to transcend limits, collides violently with our culture of convenience. Apps deliver groceries to avoid the risk of human interaction. Dating algorithms promise connection without vulnerability. Even self-help gurus sell life hacks to bypass struggle. Nietzsche's warning echoes, the surest way to destroy a man is to teach him to equate good with useful. We've weaponized utility against growth, mistaking efficiency for living, but the deepest cut comes from Arthur Schopenhauer. His philosophy reveals comfort as the negation of will, a slow suicide. Humans, he argued, are torn between two hells, suffering when we desire and boredom when we don't. The comfort zone is an attempt to cheat this pendulum by deadening both. No pain, no passion, no failure, no ecstasy. You become a still life painting, mistaking stillness for peace. Yet Schopenhauer's most devastating insight isn't about suffering. It's about meaning. The comfort zone doesn't kill you through hardship. It murders you through absence. No stakes, no story, no self. Now layer on society's invisible machinery. Aldous Huxley's Brave New World envisioned dystopia not through oppression, but through pleasure. Soma pills to mute discontent. Endless entertainment to pacify curiosity. Compare this to your TikTok feed, your Netflix queue, your personalized news, all engineered to keep you docile in the cage of your choosing. The 21st century didn't invent comfort zones. It industrialized them. Every like button is a Skinner box lever, training you to seek validation over truth. Every algorithm narrows your world like a vice, convincing you that the tiny patch of reality it shows you is the entire sky. But the true masterstroke? We've made complicity feel like autonomy. Jean-Paul Sartre called this bad faith, the act of lying to oneself to escape the terror of freedom. You tell yourself you're too busy to write that novel, too rational for spirituality, too old to change careers. These aren't reasons, they're incantations, spells to shrink your universe to manageable size. The comfort zone thrives on this self-deception. It's why you can spend years in a soul-numbing job while fervently believing you're practical. Why you tolerate toxic relationships by framing resignation as maturity. Viktor Frankl, Auschwitz survivor and founder of logotherapy, put it bluntly. When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. But what happens when we refuse that challenge? When we worship comfort like a god and sacrifice our potential on its altar? The answer lies in a neurological phenomenon called habitualization. The brain, to conserve energy, automates repeated behaviors until they become identity. Wake up at 7 a.m., commute the same route, recycle the same opinions, and eventually you disappear. Your choices fossilize into reflexes. Your personality becomes a Wikipedia entry you didn't write. This is how comfort zones metastasize, not through dramatic oppression, but the million tiny surrenders of autopilot. You don't notice the cage until you try to stretch your wings. Yet, there's a perverse genius to it all. The system, biological, psychological, societal, has turned your survival instincts against your soul. Your need for belonging keeps you mimicking others. Your fear of mortality drives you to cling to routine like a raft in a storm. Even your moments of rebellion get commodified. Self-care, marketed as indulgence. YOLO, reduced to consumerism. The comfort zone isn't static. It's adaptive. It digests your attempts to escape and turns them into decor. But here's what it can't stomach: awareness. The moment you recognize these mechanisms, see the marionette strings, the illusion begins to crumble. Jungian shadows demand integration. Nietzschean will hungers for expression. Schopenhauer's pendulum starts swinging, and Sartre's bad faith becomes intolerable. This is the crossroads where most turn back, for the truth is merciless. Your comfort zone isn't protecting you from the world, it's protecting the world from you. From your unfiltered ideas, your inconvenient passions, your power to disrupt and create, the heartbeat quickens, walls flicker. Something primal stirs in your chest, not fear, but recognition. You're beginning to see the invisible war being waged for your soul, but before you can revolt, you must face the most insidious battleground. You've glimpsed the machinery, now witness the carnage. The comfort zone doesn't announce its violence. It operates like carbon monoxide, odorless, invisible, lethal. Its first casualty is time, but not in the way you expect. Neurologically, your brain compresses routine into oblivion. The year you spent scrolling, the decade in the same job, the relationships fossilized into rituals, they vanish from memory like smoke. Why? Because novelty is the glue of consciousness. Without it, life becomes a palindrome, and your psyche begins to cannibalize itself. This isn't metaphor. Studies show that prolonged routine shrinks the hippocampus, the brain seat of memory and spatial reasoning. You're not just wasting days, you're eroding your capacity to perceive them. But the true horror lies in what replaces that lost time. Ghosts. Not the kind that haunt houses, but the phantoms of unlived lives. The artist you stifled becomes an ache in your hands. The entrepreneur you buried mutters through your insomnia. The lover you never dared to be howls in your dreams. Carl Jung called this the shadow's revenge, the exiled parts of yourself growing feral in the dark. They manifest as chronic fatigue, soul-deep boredom, unexplained rage, righteous anger, turned inward, and that existential itch no achievement can scratch, a hunger for meaning mistaken for greed. Society, of course, medicates these symptoms. It pathologizes your restlessness as ADHD, your despair as a chemical imbalance, your rage as a personality disorder. Meanwhile, the real disease goes unnamed, spiritual atrophy. You're told to live in the moment, but the present has become a prison. You're sold mindfulness apps to numb the pain of a life unlived, turning Buddhism's liberation into another cage. Even self-improvement becomes a trap, the endless hustle to optimize yourself, mistaking productivity for purpose. Here's where the architecture of control reveals its genius. The comfort zone weaponizes your own cognition against you. Take the status quo bias, a neurological glitch that makes the familiar feel inherently safer, even when it's killing you. Or hedonic adaptation, the cruel trick where new joys, a promotion, a relationship, a purchase, decay into baseline within weeks. Worst of all is the optimism bias, the delusion that someday you'll change while subconsciously believing you have infinite tomorrows. These aren't flaws. They're psychological kill switches installed by evolution. Now scale this to civilization. Every system you inhabit, education, capitalism, social media, is built on a Faustian bargain. Trade authenticity for stability. Schools reward compliance over curiosity. Corporations promote team players over truth tellers. Social media algorithms amplify your existing beliefs, creating a Truman Show of the mind. The result? A global epidemic of spectator syndrome, billions watching their own lives like buffering videos, endlessly waiting for the plot to begin. Viktor Frankl's observation grows more dire by the day. People have enough to live by, but nothing to live for. Yet even this diagnosis misses the deeper wound. It's not that we lack purpose, it's that we've outsourced its creation. Religion, nationalism, consumerism, all are prefabricated narratives to spare us the terror of authoring our own. But prefab meaning fits like a borrowed skeleton. It holds you upright, but every step feels like theft. The most insidious damage, however, is relational. Prolonged comfort zones breed a phenomenon psychologists call emotional lactose intolerance, an inability to process genuine vulnerability. Relationships become transactions. You love only as much as you're guaranteed to be loved back. You share ideas only if they've been market-tested. Even your empathy becomes selective, reserved for those who mirror your politics or aesthetics. Jean-Paul Sartre's hellscape, hell is other people, isn't a verdict on humanity, but on what happens when you abandon yourself to fit in. You turn others into mirrors, then rage at the reflections. And what of creativity? Neuroscience confirms that risk and innovation share neural pathways. The same brain regions that light up during a first kiss or a skydive also activate when you have a breakthrough idea. But in the comfort zone, those pathways rust shut. You don't just lose ideas, you lose the ability to conceive of having ideas. The philosopher Hannah Arendt warned of banality of evil, but there is a banality of good that's equally corrosive, the tyranny of realistic goals, appropriate ambitions, mature compromises. Picasso didn't paint Guernica by being realistic. Van Gogh didn't capture the stars by staying grounded. Yet the ultimate consequence defies language. It's what Kierkegaard called the sickness unto death, not physical mortality, but the despair of being eternally yourself, yet never becoming who you are. You feel it in the shower at 3 a.m. when the screens are off and the masks dissolve. Noir. That raw silence, a voice whispers, "This isn't living. This is rehearsing." But rehearsing for what? A performance that never comes? A self you'll never meet? The tragedy is compounded by cultural gaslighting. You're told you're free, yet every choice is filtered through layers of fear. You're called an individual, yet your desires are algorithmically generated. You're promised fulfillment, but only through consumption, a cycle that leaves you emptier with each purchase. Aldous Huxley's prophecy rings truer by the hour. People will come to love their oppression, to adore the technologies that undo their capacities to think, but there's a threshold approaching, a point where the ghostly ache of unlived life outweighs the fear of the unknown, where the walls you've built become more suffocating than the wilderness beyond them. You're nearing that brink now. The static-colored room is trembling. The drip has become a drumbeat. What you do next will split your life into before and after, but not in the way you expect. The walls shatter, not with a bang, but a sigh, the sound of a breath held too long finally released. You're standing in the rubble of what you once called safe, dust settling like the ash of a burned contract. This is your mutiny, but Rebellion here isn't what you expect. It's not quitting your job to backpack Bali or screaming into the void of social media. Those are performances, comfort zones in drag. True revolution begins with a revelation. The prison door was never locked. It was hinged on your obedience. Let's dismantle the myth of big leaps. Van Gogh painted his first masterpiece at 33, but his rebellion began years earlier, not with a brush, but by abandoning his career as an art dealer to live in a coal mining slum, sketching miners' faces by lantern light. Nietzsche wrote, "Thus spoke Zarathustra." While wandering the Swiss Alps, half blind and riddled with sickness, because he refused to let pain dictate his purpose. Virginia Woolf carved out a room of her own, not through grand gestures, but by guarding, 2 hours each morning like a wolf. Time she called the right to disappear. Rebellion isn't spectacle, it's sacred stubbornness, a daily refusal to let the world define your edges, the first counterintuitive truth. To escape your comfort zone, you must weaponize meaning, not motivation. Viktor Frankl survived Auschwitz by finding purpose in suffering, writing, "Those who have a why to live can bear almost any how." But here's the twist they don't teach. Your why can't be borrowed. It must be forged in the dark, where no applause reaches. For Frida Kahlo, it was painting her broken body. For Alan Turing, it was cracking the Enigma code to save millions, only to be persecuted for his sexuality. Their power came not from overcoming pain, but alchemizing it. Your comfort zone hates this. It wants you to wait for inspiration. But meaning is a verb. You create it by acting as if your life matters, especially, when you doubt it. Now, the mindset shift that terrifies the status quo. Embrace cosmic insignificance. Astronomer Carl Sagan wrote that we're a mote of dust suspended in a sunbeam, and he meant it as liberation. When you grasp that existence owes you nothing, that the universe will forget your name, your fears, your humiliations, a perverse freedom takes root. If nothing matters, everything can. The job rejection won't echo in eternity. The awkward conversation can't tarnish the stars. This isn't nihilism. It's existential antifreeze. It melts the paralysis of perfectionism. But how to sustain this? Enter the Japanese concept of wabi-sabi, the art of finding beauty in imperfection. Most rebellions die because we expect linear progress. You'll relapse into old patterns. You'll crave the numbness. The key is to treat setbacks like a Zen gardener treats weeds, not as failures, but features of the landscape. Every time you choose discomfort over dormancy, you're not succeeding, you're practicing. Neuroscience confirms this. Each risk taken, no matter how small, thickens the prefrontal cortex's neural pathways for courage. You're literally rewiring your brain to crave growth. Here's where society's traps resurface. The self-help industrial complex will try to sell you fear-setting, comfort challenges, and other systematized rebellions. Ignore them. Your path won't fit a template. Franz Kafka didn't overcome his torment by journaling. He became his torment, writing The Metamorphosis, as a man literally imprisoned by his family. Emily Dickinson's rebellion was one of radical retreat, writing whilst 800 poems in seclusion, most discovered after her death. Your rebellion might look like stillness, or chaos, or both. The only rule, it must terrify the version of you from 6 months ago. Now, the ultimate taboo. Cultivate holy rage. Not the kind that burns out in Twitter threads, but the slow-burning fury of those denied their humanity. Martin Luther King Jr. harnessed it. So did Simone de Beauvoir. But you've been taught that anger is unspiritual or unproductive. Lies. Rage is the immune response of a soul detecting poison. When harnessed, not suppressed, it becomes jet fuel for change. The trick is to aim it upward, at the systems inside and out that shrink you, not sideways at fellow prisoners. Let's get tactical. Start with micro-rebellions. Write a deliberately bad poem and burn it. Ask a stranger for their life story. Spend a day saying yes to every impulse that scares you. These aren't exercises. They're neurological mutinies. Each one proves to your amygdala that discomfort isn't fatal. But the real work happens in the shadows. When you catch yourself censoring an opinion, lean in. When envy flares, a sign of suppressed desire, dissect it. When boredom strikes, don't reach for your phone. Ask, what is this void trying to birth? History's greatest rebels shared one trait. They befriended uncertainty. Einstein called his theories thought experiments. Marie Curie carried radium in her pocket, fully aware of the risks. You must become a scientist of your own potential, running trials on what ignites you. Most will fail. That's the point. The comfort zone's greatest lie is that failure is finite. In reality, it's data. Edison didn't fail 1,000 times. He discovered 1,000 ways a filament wouldn't break. But perhaps the most radical act is to redefine safety. Rock climbers know this. When you're clinging to a cliff, survival depends on committing to the move, not white-knuckling the ledge. Likewise, psychologist Abraham Maslow found that self-actualized people feel safest when growing. Their security comes from trust in their resilience, not control over circumstances. This is what the Stoics called the dichotomy of control, focusing not on what happens to you, but how you relate to what happens. Yet all this crumbles without the final ingredient, ritualized discomfort. The samurai practiced mushin, mind like water, by exposing themselves to sudden attacks during meditation. You need modern equivalents, cold showers at dawn, improv classes, conversations where you lead with your shame. The goal isn't to toughen up, but to dissolve the illusion that comfort and safety are partners. They're rivals. As you begin, a chilling realization will dawn. The world needs your comfort zone. Corporations profit from your complacency. Algorithms monetize your predictability. Even loved ones, unconsciously threatened by your growth, may resist. This is where most rebellions die, the crossroads of belonging and becoming. But remember Rumi's words, you were born with wings. Why prefer to crawl through life? The dust has settled. The rubble surrounds you. In the distance, wilderness. It's time to choose, rebuild the walls or walk into the storm. But before you decide, know this. The greatest danger isn't the unknown ahead, it's the lie that you ever had a choice. The static dissolves, not into light, but into texture, the rough grain of reality you've been numb to for decades. You're standing at the edge of an impossible cliff. Below, the fog of your unlived lives. Above, a sky dense with unborn versions of yourself. The air smells of lightning. You realize, with vertigo, that there's no ground beneath you. There never was. Here's the ultimate truth. Your comfort zone wasn't a place. It was a delusion. A story you told yourself to avoid the terrifying truth that safety is an illusion woven from denial. Every moment of your life has been a free fall. You simply refuse to feel the wind. But this isn't nihilism, it's liberation. The great existential secret, known to mystics and physicists alike, reality is not solid. It's a negotiation. Quantum theory shows particles exist as probabilities, until observed. Buddhist monks dissolve matter through decades of meditation. Artists turn anguish into monuments. What unites them? The refusal to accept the given world. You've been taught that reality is a noun. It's not. It's a verb, something you do. And every second spent in the comfort zone was a vote for a smaller, paler version of existence. But the inverse is also true. Every act of courage alters the fabric of what's possible. When Rosa Parks refused to move, she didn't just challenge a bus seat, she bent the space-time of segregation. When Einstein imagined riding a light beam, he didn't just theorize relativity, he proved that reality yields to stubborn imagination. You've been outsourcing this power. Now it's time to reclaim it. The final revelation splits into 3 truths, each a scalpel to your remaining chains. You are already free. Sartre was right. Man is condemned to be free. Your anxiety isn't a flaw. It's the friction of infinite choice. The job, the relationship, the identity, you've always been able to walk away. What paralyzed you wasn't fear, but the responsibility of that freedom. Nietzsche's Übermensch, the self-overcoming human, isn't some superhero. It's you. Once you stop begging life for permission, your soul speaks in symptoms. That chronic back pain, maybe it's the weight of unshed tears, the insomnia, a protest against days spent betraying your values. Freud reduced psyche to pathology, but the ancients knew better. Your body is an oracle. Migraines are unspoken truths pounding at the skull's vault. Autoimmune disorders are the self attacking the self, a perfect metaphor for comfort zones. Healing begins when you stop silencing these messages with pills and platitudes and start decoding them. Death is your co-author, not the distant specter you avoid with antioxidants, but the whispering collaborator in every choice. The Mexican. Day of the Dead celebrates La Muerte as a dancing partner. Japanese samurai wrote death poems before battle. Why? Because mortality isn't morbid. It's the ultimate truth teller. Every morning it asks, is this a day you'll trade for a day of dying? Most say yes. But those who say no, who live as if each breath is borrowed from eternity, taste what the Sufis call fana, annihilation of the false self. Now the paradigm shift. Risk isn't the price of freedom, it's the proof. A diamond forms under pressure. A star requires collapse to shine. You've been seeking growth without rupture, love without loss, meaning without mess. It doesn't exist. The comfort zone's great lie was making you believe you could have a self without soul. But soul is forged in disequilibrium, the crucible Carl Jung called necessary for transformation. Look at history's awakened ones. Mandela turned 27 prison years into a masterclass in becoming. Frida Kahlo painted her broken body until pain and beauty fused. Van Gogh sold 1 painting but left 900 as a lighthouse for the lost. Their power wasn't talent or luck. It was refusal to let their circumstances define their ceiling, to mistake the map for the territory, to abandon their inner fire to the winds of opinion. But here's what no one tells you. Your comfort zone was love. A twisted, suffocating love, but love nonetheless. It was your psyche's attempt to protect the wounded child within, the one who was mocked for dreaming, punished for curiosity, abandoned for being too much. That child built the walls, brick by brick, to keep the world's cruelty out. Honor them, thank them. Then, take their hand and whisper, "We're safe now, not because the world's kind, but because we're finally strong enough to face it." The cliff edge trembles, the fog parts. You see now that the fall isn't a threat, it's flight, in disguise. All those years of playing it safe were training wheels for this moment. The universe didn't abandon you. It was waiting for you to outgrow the need for ground. So jump, not into recklessness, but into radical trust. Trust that your fear of drowning was misplaced. You've had gills all along. Trust that the universe conspires not for your comfort, but your expansion. Trust that every risk is a homecoming. As you fall, the final illusion burns away. There's no zone to escape, only a self to resurrect. The walls were never real. The safety was never real. The only thing that's ever been real is the fire in your chest, the one you've been smothering with excuses. Let it breathe. Let it burn. The ground, if you can still call it that, awaits. But you'll never land. Not really. You'll keep falling, keep flying, keep becoming. And one day, when someone asks how you escaped the static room, you'll smile and say, "I didn't. I realized I was the static and the room and the key." Then you'll turn back to the storm, your new comfort zone, and walk deeper into the thunder.